Okay, what's up, everyone? Undead Youth here, back again. I know it has been a really long time, and I'm sorry for that. It's just with Blizzard announcing exactly when the pre-patch was going to come along, it really didn't make sense for me to do videos, especially not class guides, since everything was going to change by a specific date. So that's why you haven't heard anything from me. But I'm here to pick up right where I left off, actually, by providing you guys with a pre-patch Mistweaver guide. I've been testing Mistweaver for the past few days ever since the patch came out in raids, mythic dungeons, time walkings, and so on. And honestly, it's surprisingly good. And a lot of the things that change were quality of life that make playing the class a lot more enjoyable. There are some things that some players have been saying about how the class is, a little bit mana starved at the moment. And while that's true, I want to assure you that that's not a reason to not play this awesome class, because the class has a ton of things going for it. So we're going to talk about all those things. But first, let's kind of take a step back and talk about Mistweavers, what they were, what they did, and what they do now. Before, in Warlords of Draenor, Mistweavers are primarily the spread raid healer, which basically just meant that you would use Renewing Mist and coupled with Pool of Mist and high amounts of multi-strike to spread Renewing Mist across the raid, and thus use Uplift to heal the raid as soon as it took damage. This could amount in doing way more healing than something like Circle of Healing or Wild Growth could do, which are comparable AoE spells, because of the fact that it could hit way more targets with Uplift, because it was entirely dependent on how many targets you had Renewing Mist on. And that also didn't really have like a huge range cap either. So it led to, in periods of intense damage, Mistweavers continuously being able to refresh the raid's health pool little by little. Also, they were the only class in the game that could do a considerable amount. I use considerable in air quotes even though you can't see, but a considerable amount of healing whilst DPSing by using the fist weaving playstyle. A lot of those things, in fact, everything I just mentioned, so the core of what the class used to be, is completely gone in Legion. But I still love this class even more. I would kind of say the spec has been homogenized, but I think the better word, the better term is normalized. The spec has been normalized. It's a bit more in line with other healers. We no longer have chi, for instance. We no longer use a secondary resource. No healers do. We just use mana. And so that's one reason why this spec feels really weird right off the bat, because before this class really didn't have to worry about mana whatsoever, because it had Mana Tea that it could generate through fist weaving and through using chi. However, both chi and Mana Tea as we know it are gone, so all of our spells do have a direct taxing increase of mana consumption, as opposed to our best heal being a complete and total chi spender. So there are a lot of things to get used to, but let's talk about some of the spells that have changed. Then we'll talk about, kind of compile it all together and talk about what our role is in the raids going forward. Then we'll look at talents, and then we'll kind of summarize everything. So we have a Fuse, which kind of replaces Surging Mist, but not really. It's a fast, inexpensive heal, but it heals for nowhere near as much as Surging Mist used to. It really doesn't heal for much of anything at all. But it's really important to note that we actually have a new mastery now. So I am going to go ahead and flip over here so you guys can see our new mastery, if I can actually find it in our spellbook. It's called Gusts of Mist. And what Gusts of Mist does is that whenever you heal your target with Effuse, Renewing Mist, Enveloping Mist, or Vivify, oh my god, really? Put your pet right there. Out of all the places to put your pet, you had to put it right there. Anyway, um, so anytime you heal basically with your direct healing spells, what's going to happen is the target will instantly be healed for an amount depending on how much mastery you have. This is a much more useful mastery than just random orbs that sometimes got absorbed and you could detonate by spinning a global to do something you didn't want to do in the first place. Even though this mastery could potentially, just go to overhealing, it's still much better than it used to be. And it must be taken into account all the times where we're looking at both the mana cost and the effectiveness of all of our heals, including Effuse. Effuse doesn't heal for much, but when you consider it's basically just an almost mana neutral way of being able to apply your mastery heal to a target, it's not that bad. But even more than this, we also have another huge change to the class where we have Soothing Mist. It's no longer a castable ability on a target that will start channeling on them. Rather, whenever you cast your direct healing spells, which is every spell we just mentioned, minus Renewing Mist. So Fuse, Enveloping Mist, and Vivify, or Life Cocoon. Life Cocoon replaces Renewing Mist in that example. You will start channeling Soothing Mist on them until you take another action or until you move. So and this time it's completely free, by the way. So that's another thing that you have to keep in mind whenever you're talking about your direct heals. You're not just talking about the amount of mana that they cost and the amount of healing that they do, but also the amount of healing that your mastery is going to do for free, and the amount of healing that Soothing Mist will do for free. So if you couple that all together, Fuse is a relatively awesome heal. It is fast and it is inexpensive, and altogether it heals for a decent amount. It's a nice way to move around your mastery and your Soothing Mist to whoever needs it without using a ton of mana. Next, we still have Renewing Mist, but it's changed. Before, Renewing Mist was a spell that you would put on a target and it would have 3 stacks, and every time it would bounce to another target that was completely random, hopefully one that needed it, it would lose one of those stacks until eventually you would have it spread out over the raid, and then you would basically just uplift and you would kind of more or less detonate those Renewing Mist stacks. And so in that regard, and in that iteration, Renewing Mist and Uplift were basically 2 halves of the same spell, more or less. Now Renewing Mist is its own spell since Uplift no longer exists, and to compensate for that, it heals for a lot more. So you'll find that if you're using the spec even close to right during 5-man content, Renewing Mist is more than likely going to be up there at the top of your healing charts, which is very, very weird if you're used to playing a Mistweaver, even more so if you have your 2 or 4 piece set bonus from tier 18. What it does now is it first of all applies a decent instant heal to the target, which is great, and it will proc our mastery, which is also something to note, but it does not proc Soothing Mist. And then it will continue to heal the target over time. However, if that target reaches full health, the heal will then bounce to another nearby injured ally. So it's almost overheal proof. It's a really nice feature to have on a hot that I'm sure resto druids wish they could have, because hots do sometimes overheal, less and less now that there are less absorbs in the game, but it's still possible. And so now it will just bounce to whoever needs the heal the most. So it's pretty darn efficient and heals for a decent amount. You pretty much just want to be casting this ability on cooldown. And then you have Enveloping Mist. Enveloping Mist is more or less the exact same as it used to be. It has a short duration, but it's an incredibly powerful hot because of how short it is, so it heals for so much in huge bursts, and it increases your other heals on the target as well, which is really important because, again, this ability procs Soothing Mist and our Mastery, so it buffs the other 2 passive heals that we give to our target as soon as we cast Enveloping Mist, which just makes Enveloping Mist the shit. And you want to cast the spell a lot. It is relatively mana intensive, but if you're doing a lot of single target or tank healing, there is literally nothing better than Enveloping Mist because it boosts your passives even more that boost your instant heal or your direct healing. So Enveloping Mist is just the shit. I can't really explain it any other way. Then you have Vivify. Vivify is a cleave heal that will heal 2 additional targets to the 1 target that you originally cast it on, which basically means if I were to target, in fact, I don't even think I have enough dummies out here to show this to you, but you can see if I target this dummy with Vivify, that dummy gets healed. Yay! Perfect. So this is number 1, what I have been crying out for since I started playing my Mistweaver seriously in Proving Grounds, Challenge Modes, and Mythics, is some sort of cleave healing ability. You just didn't have it before. And I'll talk about this more again when we come back to Soothing Mist, but there was just no cleave healing available to the spec, and that sucked. And this is the exact answer to that. I'm so glad Blizz heard our cries for some sort of cleave healing. That's really good. This ability also has a chance, every time your Renewing Mist heals a target, there's a very small chance to make your next Vivify heal for 40% more. It's a pretty sizable amount. So you want to, definitely be on the lookout for those procs, and hopefully you'll see that demonstrated as we continue to go through things and I kind of talk to you about it, because it is pretty important. Then you have Essence Font. Essence Font is yet another new ability that kind of replaces Uplift, but in a very different way. It is a humongous group heal that can heal like a literal ton of people, a literal shit ton of people. and it heals for a shit ton and leaves a hot on them that increases your direct healing to them. So that again increases things like enveloping mist or effuse or vivify, and thus boost mastery and boost soothing mist. So it's just this flow, this ebb and this flow of all of these abilities. Just from what we've described so far within these 6 abilities, we have a very cohesive spec. It's very different from what we're used to, and when I first read these abilities, I was like, what the fuck is going on? But hopefully I've explained it to you in an order that kind of makes sense, because the spec is incredibly cohesive, just like it used to be. Just the spells operate a little differently. So that's kind of the rough bits out of the way, right? So based on what we've seen so far, we can tell that we have the tools as a Mistweaver to be both very effective single target and tank healers, as well as being an extremely effective AoE healer should we decide to be either of those things. So the question remains, what should we be? And honestly, so far in the pre-patch, with gear being the way it is and the fact that absorbs have been largely nerfed, we're more than likely going to end up filling the role of tank healer through using things like enveloping mist pretty much every second we can on the target, and then just channeling soothing mist on them, moving around our mastery with effuse when other players start to take a little bit of damage, and then using vivify as more and more people in the group start taking damage, just to heal that kind of stuff up. It really is an extremely easy process. Basically, if I'm going to single target or tank heal, it's pretty much just going to look like keeping renewing mist on cooldown. Then we're going to use enveloping mists, and then we're pretty much just going to sit here and wait until we have to cast another renewing mist. We want to make sure we're casting renewing mist on cooldown, because that's what's going to let us have the most chance of giving us Empower Vivify procs. More likely than not, you're going to want to hold off on Vivify until you absolutely have to, or until you get one of those procs. If this target over here were to take a little bit of damage and I just really quickly want to move my Mastery and my Soothing Mist over, I'll just use Effuse, because it doesn't cost very much mana. Pretty simple stuff so far, right? Pretty simple stuff so far. But we also have to, go ahead and talk about our cooldowns, because that is definitely a beast in and of itself. But really quickly, before we talk about that, let's talk about why we are not going to be the AoE healer. And it kind of goes back to what most people are saying about the Mistweaver currently, which is that they spend a ton of mana. Vivify is not a cheap spell, and Essence Font is got to be one of, if not the most expensive healing spell in the game right now. It is absolutely insane, though it heals for a ton. And the fact of the matter is, keeping these abilities up is usually just not the most efficient way to heal, if anything else. These abilities are more or less here when you have to use them. Vivify, we can actually make mana free, and we want to try to do so as much as we possibly can. I'll talk about that in a second. Essence Font is a tremendous heal and buffs our heals further, but I really want you to think of this more like Wild Growth. If you saw my Resto Druid guide from the previous expansion, it's that this is almost a mini raid cooldown, in the sense that it is not something that you want to hit on cooldown, or even when the raid looks like it's starting to dip a little bit low. You're really going to lean on your other healers in those times, because your mana is still better spent spot healing people that really need it, that are affected by serious debuffs like Heartseeker and things like that, or just channeling your heals on the tank. That's where your time and your mana is honestly better spent. You have Effuse if you need to use it, but it's definitely not something that you're going to be leaning on too terribly much. I'm sorry, not Effuse, Essence Font, excuse me. Alright, so now we kind of got that out of the way. Let's talk a bit about our cooldowns, because they are actually pretty cool. We already know what Life Cocoon does, so we don't really need to go over that. It puts a bubble on a target, increases the heals that target receives, and it channels Soothing Mist, so it buffs Soothing Mist. Awesome. Not really a lot to say about Life Cocoon other than the fact that it's great. What else can you say? Revival is a lot less powerful than it used to be, but it is still an incredibly powerful cooldown for the fact that it heals everyone in the raid, dispels everyone in the raid, and does so on the move. So definitely try to fit it in on the move as much as possible, because that's definitely its best quality now. And when we get further artifact traits later on down the line, Revival will do more healing, but that is way later down the line. And then the other really truly important cooldown to note is Thunder Focus Tea. Let's pull up Thunder Focus Tea on the big screen here, and we'll look at what it does. So Thunder Focus Tea, if I can find it, there it is. Thunder Focus Tea. You receive a jolt of energy empowering your next spell cast. If you choose to cast Renewing Mist after Thunder Focus Tea, it will not incur its cooldown. If you choose to cast a Fuse after casting Thunder Focus Tea, its healing will be increased by 200%. If you choose to cast Enveloping Mist after casting Thunder Focus Tea, then that will be an instant cast spell. And if you choose to cast Vivify after Thunder Focus Tea, it will cost you no mana. And if you choose to cast Essence Font, it will be castable while moving. All of these benefits are pretty good. There's nothing that's obviously like super bad here, but it really just comes down to the situation. But honestly, one of the big like major benchmark pieces of skill cap for this class is going to be using Thunder Focus Tea in the most efficient way. And that is going to be a major difference between you and the Mistweaver sitting next to you, to be honest with you. Generally speaking, you're going to want to use Thunder Focus Tea in combination with Renewing Mist by default. Why? Because it's nice to have hots ticking on people so they might take, or so when they take damage, it does what it needs to do, and then if it's going to overheal, it's just going to bounce anyway. Even more than that, it's because the more Renewing Mist you have out, the more times they heal, which means the more chances you have to not to reset, but to give yourself those Vivify procs to increase them by 40%. Which brings me to Vivify. If the raid is taking damage that warrants it, Vivify is actually the best thing to use Thunder Focus Tea on if you have a Vivify proc. Very, very important. If you have a Vivify proc, then you want to use Thunder Focus Tea on Vivify because it's going to heal for 40% more and be completely free. And it heals for a ton. Don't get me wrong, Vivify heals a lot. See, here we have the Vivify proc. We're going to go ahead and pop our Thunder Focus Tea, use it. No mana, tons of healing going out right there. And it starts Soothing Mist and it Mastery. You know the deal by now. It's a really powerful heal. Just because of the mana efficiency aspect of it, not even because it's so powerful, do you want to try to marry those things up as much as possible. So you want to be mindful of your Thunder Focus Tea and then how long you might have left on a Vivify proc. Other than that, you never want to use this ever on Essence Font, because Essence Font, like, it's just not worth it compared to the benefits that you're going to receive from the other spells. Casting Essence Font on the move is just not that great. I mean, you have Revival. If you really need to cast Essence Font on the move, just cast Revival. It's pretty much the same thing. A little bit better, actually. And then with Enveloping Mist, when tanks are taking heavy damage or single targets are taking heavy damage, definitely go ahead and Thunder Focus Tea Enveloping Mist to quickly give them a heal. Very similar to what we're used to from our old Soothing Mist, where we would cast Soothing Mist and then have a instant Enveloping Mist. Pretty easy. And then Effuse, again, much like with Essence Font, there's almost always going to be something that you'd rather be buffing with Thunder Focus Tea than Effuse. Effuse does not have any real synergy with other active abilities. It's fine for moving around our passives, but it doesn't have any synergies with our actives, so we don't really want to be buffing it with Thunder Focus Tea because it doesn't help us, you know? So, but that's something to definitely bear in mind, is that every time your Thunder Focus Tea's cooldown, Thunder Focus Teas, it sounded weird. Anyway, every time this spell's cooldown comes around, you want to be taking into account the damage that's going on in the fight. Is there enough damage to warrant me using Vivify? Is there enough damage to really warrant me using an instant cast Enveloping? Probably not. Then it's going to go to Renewing Mist. And how many, Renewing Mist do I have out? Do I have this Vivify proc? Then I'm going to probably be using it on Vivify, so on and so forth. But you want to be taking into account the procs you have, the damage in the encounter, what's coming up when, and all of those things, and that's how you're going to use Thunder Focus Tea. So the first major bit of skill cap, I guess, involved in the class is going to be there, right? So all in all, definitely a lot of interesting things in your core healer kit. A lot of people like I said, are kind of down on this spec because things like Vivify cost so much mana and Essence Font cost so much mana. But again, like I said, you really have to take into account everything that you get when you cast a spell like Vivify, especially when you have procs, especially when you have Thunder Focusy. You're getting Mastery, you're getting Soothing Mist, you're getting all of this healing done. It's crazy stuff that's going on. Some people are upset about the changes to Soothing Mist, and I never could understand that because Soothing Mist in Warlords was actually the most annoying part of the spec. I hated casting this ability only to stop it when something more important came along. I also hated the fact that it cost me mana. It was such a crap ability. Honestly, it really was. But it was something you felt you had to cast because it buffed your other abilities, right? It buffed your Surging Mist and made it instant. It buffed your Enveloping Mist and made it instant. So if you were going to do any type of single target healing in WoD, you were casting Soothing Mist before you were casting its abilities, which meant you were using 2 globals to heal any one single target, which was why the spec had such shitty cleave healing, because in order to get the maximum heal I could get on a single target, I had to waste 2 globals just to heal someone, and then I probably still had to spend more globals to get Chi to use Enveloping Mist. It was a mess. It was a shit show. Now we just have Vivify, right? And now we just have these abilities which are that will eventually target Soothing Mist for us, right? And so basically, in my mind, just cuts down on the amount of globals that I really have to spend to heal someone. Even more than that, I still have the ability to make my Enveloping Mist instant cast if I want to. It's just a bit more of a skill cap involved with it. So I'm totally fine with all these changes. At first I was a little afraid of them, but honestly it makes a much, much less annoying healer out of the Mistweaver Monk and a really powerful single target healer. But we are not done. We are not done. No, we have a shit ton more to talk about, but this time I promise you I'm going to fit it all into one video. So let's keep going. Let's look at talents, and I'll try to make this as quick as I possibly can because they're way more straightforward than they used to be. You have Chi Burst. You know what it does. Kamehameha of healing does damage and healing to everything in front of you for like a shotgun blast of goodness. Then you have Zen Pulse. Zen Pulse has changed. It looks like Zen Sphere, but it's not. Basically, you pulse, detonate Chi around the target, whoever you're targeting. It will be an ally, but yeah, whoever you're targeting. It does damage to all those enemies, and then it will heal them per the amount of enemies that it damages, which is pretty cool. And then finally you have Mistwalk, which instantly dashes you towards a friendly target and heals them for a little bit. Okay? From a rating perspective, Chi Burst is just about the only one, especially for Hellfire Citadel, where there's a ton of stacked phases like, Feast of Souls and Dragging Hands. Pretty much going to be the default for rating. Zen Pulse is a really good option for 5-mans, where the tank's going to be surrounded by a lot of trash. Not only does it do a decent amount of DPS, it's also way more likely that you're going to be surrounded by more than one mob in a 5-man than you are staring at a single target raid boss. So while you might get some good use out of Zen Pulse on trash in a raid, largely is irrelevant. So Zen Pulse is definitely good for challenge modes. Then you have Mistwalk. Mistwalk is, like I said, doesn't really have a place because the other two, one is good for 5-mans, one is good for raids, but Mistwalk's mobility portion, fuck the heal, the mobility portion of Mistwalk is what's important. As we go through this tier and we start talking about doing damage and fist weaving, you're going to start to really quickly understand why Mistwalk, being able to instantly dash into melee range if you Mistwalk your tank, is super important. So just bear in mind that can be absolutely invaluable should you decide to fist weave. Moving on to some sort of movement speed increase. I'm going to keep this simple. It does not really matter. It's whatever you're most comfortable with and whatever you're going to use. But at the same time, it does really matter for the same reasons that I just said Mistwalk matters. Because moving in and out of melee range is going to be a huge skill cap number 2 for the Mistweaver Monk. So you do want to use whatever you're comfortable with, and also just whatever is going to allow you to never get targeted by things that are bad for you. Okay? So Chi Torpedo replaces roll. You roll faster or farther, and then it also increases the movement speed. So it's kind of like momentum mixed with Chi Torpedo from WoD. You have Celerity, which gives you 3 charges of roll, which is nice. So if you need to traverse really large distances with roll, then you have Celerity. And then finally you have Tiger's Lust. Tiger's Lust is pretty much exactly as you know it, and it can be cast on other targets, which probably just makes it the best. Not only that, you have it and your roll still, so it gives you the most versatility. You're not required to move a fixed distance like you are with Chi Torpedo and roll. You have it in combination with those abilities, and it can be cast on other people, and it removes roots and snares. So in general, it's probably the best. But I personally just like Chi Torpedo, as it is very nice for getting out of really sticky situations really quickly, without having to actually turn yourself and move or anything like that. Like it just launches you forward. So pick whatever you want as long as you bear in mind what you're going to be best at using. Moving on to level 45, you have Life Cycles, Spirit of the Crane, and Mistwrap. These are more or less all some sort of ways to hold on to your mana. So you have Life Cycles, which Enveloping Mist reduces the cost of your next Vivify by 20%, and Vivify reduces the mana cost of your next Enveloping Mist by 20%. This is a little like the not Mistweaver, the Windwalker Mastery, where if you alternate your abilities, you gain some sort of, bonus. This is really great because these are going to be your two most used abilities a lot of the times. Because you're going to be mostly using Enveloping Mist on single targets, then as the damage starts to ramp up, you're going to be using your Vivify, and you're always going to be looking for chances to use your Vivify procs. So this is great. It's just like an almost passive buff to both of these things that reduces their mana strain on you, which is great. The only thing I guess I would say I won't say bad about this ability, but you are going to try to, whenever you can, use Thunder Focus Tea to make and Vivify free, which can make this redundant, but it's a buff you can monitor to make sure that doesn't happen. So again, skill cap. Then you have Spirit of the Crane, Teachings of the Monastery, which we'll get to, but basically just means that your Blackout Kick will restore a little tiny bit of your mana. That's right, Fist Weaving. We'll talk about it. Mistwrap basically increases the duration of Enveloping Mist and its healing done by 10%. And you may now channel Soothing Mist while moving. Okay, for raids, 9 times out of 10, you're going to start with Life Cycle because of the mana issues that the class does suffer from. Life Cycles just passively reduces the mana strain of some of your better abilities, which gives it 2 thumbs up. However, if you really want to add, if you really are like me and you miss Fist Weaving and you want to add some complexity to this rotation, even more so than it already has, then by all means take Spirit of the Crane, because it is going to give you a ton of mana back. And also, if you're doing fights in HFC where you know how your team handles this fight, you know when the downtime moments are, and you're going to be in there DPSing anyway, then please take Spirit of the Crane, because you're just going to be able to regen mana while you do it. But those are a little bit more situational, and we will talk about the whole thing for Fist Weaving in a second. And then finally, Mistwrap is typically going to be your 5-man talent, because it does not at all increase your mana efficiency. So you will still drain mana just as you normally would. And you have more opportunities to drink in 5-mans than you do in raids. However, once we get further on down in the expansion, when gear is better, set bonuses are more nailed down. You have legendaries. It's potentially a really terrible trinket like Demonic Phylactery comes out. All those things come into play. Mistwrap will probably be standard because you will no longer need that much mana regen, and its bonus to your best single target heal is definitely not negligible, and you can now cast Soothing Mist while moving, which is just awesome. It really allows you to follow those tanks around, and also on fights where there's a lot of movement even now, you can definitely tank this ability. Honestly, I have to fight myself to pick Life Cycles. I know I should pick Life Cycles because of the current state of mana, but I really like Mistwrap. I really like this ability. Anyways, moving on. Level 60. Doesn't matter. Probably going to be taking Leg Sweep, Song of Chi-Ji for dungeons. Doesn't matter. Level 75. Healing Elixirs has changed. Before, it happened every time you drank your Mana Tea. Now you don't drink Mana Tea anymore, so you have Healing Elixirs, which has 2 charges, 30-second recharge time, and will heal you for 15% of your maximum health every time you drink. And when you fall below 35%, it will instantly consume a charge if available. Cool. Pretty good. If you don't know what's going to happen in a fight, probably going to be the best option for you. If there's unpredictable damage, probably going to be the best option for you because it allows you to instantly heal yourself up without having to use any mana. 2 thumbs up. Diffuse Magic, however, is if you do know the fight pretty well, or if that fight requires you to do any sort of soaking. Doom Wells, like anything. Like I find myself using Diffuse Magic a lot, and I would say it's probably the default rating ability once you have an idea of what's going on in the encounter. So the vast majority of things that are going to target you or hurt you are magical. Then you have Dampen Harm, which basically the same thing as Diffuse Magic, just anything that's physical, right? Which you'd be surprised how many things in HFC are. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but I know they're definitely there. So yeah, probably going to pick Diffuse Magic for rating. Healing Elixirs for dungeons, as it's a bit more random who gets targeted by what and how often, right? So Healing Elixirs. Then moving on, level 90, you have Refreshing Jade Wind, which will do a ton of healing, you know, the kind of thing it already did, basically. And it increases your essence fonts healing. If you really wanted to be an AoE fucking Pokemon master, I don't know why I said Pokemon master, but anyway, if you want to fucking be an AoE hero, pick Refreshing Jade Wind. However, you will probably be able to keep it and essence font up for maybe 3 seconds before you go. No one is taking Refreshing Jade Wind right now. 8,000 mana for Refreshing Jade Wind and 12,000 mana for essence font. How much mana do I have? I have, was that 160k? That's 20k. No fucking way. No earthly way. Nah. Especially not when it's in a tier full of free abilities. No. No fucking way. The point is, if you had to, and I mean had to do this, you could. You could spec yourself more for AoE, but you're not going to do this realistically. And you would pretty much be giving up on doing anything single target oriented, which is not the best way to go. Then you have Invoke Chi-Ji, which replaces Zuen, goes around, heals people. If you have a spread group, and also if you have a large group, Invoke Chi-Ji is going to be best. And also if she just happens to sync up really well with moments of high damage. However, you have a bit more of a spread out healing with Summon Jade Statue. So your Jade Statue is still here, but it is a talent, right? But it pretty much does what it used to do. When you channel Soothing Mist, it will channel Soothing Mist on the target. However, the cool thing about this is if you stop, it will keep going until you target something else, which I thought was really cool. It has its own indeterminate amount of time, though, so it will eventually stop casting on things, but I thought it was pretty cool that I can stop, find something else to go cast it on, and it'll keep casting on that target, which is pretty neat. Pretty cool stuff. So, single target and smaller groups, you're going to be using Summon Serpent Statue, and then for more spread out and large groups, you're going to be invoking that Chi-Ji. Pretty easy, and I also like, you know, if you're in a 5-man, like this is a more 5-man oriented build, so you can tell I've taken Mistwrap and Summon Serpent Statue, so got a lot of Soothing Mist going on. And then you have, for your level 100 talent, some pretty interesting stuff. You have Manatee, which just means that you can cast your spells at 50% of the cost, which is pretty cool, right? Because we talked about how much of a problem mana is. Then you have Thunder Focus Tea, which empowers you. Your Thunder Focus Tea will empower your next 2 spells instead of your next 1, which adds a lot of thought to the class. And finally, you have Rising Thunder. Rising Thunder, whenever you use Rising Sun Kick, it resets the remaining cooldown of Thunder Focus Tea. What? This talent tree is all interesting. Usually, like, Manatee is just like the odd guy out. If you really, truly are having mana problems, you're probably not playing the class correctly. And there's probably some other talent choices along the way that you could have hit right. In all honesty, it's just awkward in the tier that it's in. It could have, honestly, I could have seen things going a little bit differently in Manatee being up in the level 45 tier and Mistwrap being in the level 100 tier, just maybe buffed a little bit more to be some sort of competition for these 2 abilities. But honestly, it just seems so odd in this tier. You're just never really going to take it because the other 2 are just straight up healing increases and Manatee really isn't. So there that is. But Either way, uh, Focus Thunder is just like the default. If you don't want a Fist Weave, you're going to be taking Focus Thunder, and it's really cool because it allows you to be a little bit more liberal with things. It allows you to do things like, prop that tank up with that instant cast enveloping mist, but still also throw out two renewing mists. If you use it solely in combination with renewing mist, you can blanket a lot of people. Can blanket an entire 5-man. You can blanket a ton of people, which is going to return you a ton of Vivify procs. You could use it to cast 2 free Vivifies, which is pretty cool. You can do a lot of really interesting things. You get really powerful when Thunder Focus Tea comes off of cooldown, which is really, really good. And then finally, you have Rising Thunder, which Rising Thunder is probably going to yield you the majority, like the biggest healing increase, because it's just way more Thunder Focus Teas. And like, not only do you have Thunder Focus Teas own cooldown, you have Rising Sun Kick, and Rising Sun Kick can get reset crazy. And of course, we would be assuming you would be taking Spirit of the Crane with this as well. So you'd be getting mana back as you're resetting this stuff too. Crazy stuff. But of course, you have to Fist Weave, which now we'll kind of talk about that. In and of itself, Fist Weaving has obviously gotten nerfed in that it does not heal, but also one other important thing has changed. Before, we were considered melee classes. Even when we were standing at ranged, we were considered melee. So we didn't get targeted by things that target most ranged classes. And Blizzard doesn't want that anymore because that's not any sort of an area of skill. And I agree. Begrudgingly, I agree. So now they've made it so that we are targetable by random damage and mechanics and counters that would elsewise target range, but we are not going to be targeted by things that are just instant cast. If this person gets hit by this, the whole raid dies. So like something like a chain lightning or something crazy like that. We're not going to get targeted by completely devastating abilities while we're in melee, but we will still get targeted by things like Fell Surge or like Doomfire. I don't know. Just things that aren't going to kill you, things you have plenty of time to run away from. In which case, that's why things like Mistwalk, that's why you see so many movement abilities in this talent tree. Because things like Mistwalk become important to, fuck off to Egypt when you have fucking something, Fell whatever the fuck. And then you need fucking Chi Torpedo or to Mistwalk back in, right? That's why Chi Torpedo is good to fuck off to Egypt, and then Tiger's Lust can get you back. Like, that's why these abilities are here. In case you're wondering, like a lot of other classes have just the majority of their trees are all about healing, not with the Mistweaver, because it's assuming that you are at some point in time going to take advantage of the fact that you can either do damage and regen mana, or do damage, regen mana, and heal for more. So it's really important to know that, and I will eventually be probably switching to this kind of stuff as I get a little bit more comfortable with the class. I'm not that comfortable, but I can definitely see what the idea is here. And if you actually want to know what your Fist Weaving rotation is, we'll talk about that briefly, as it's a lot less complicated than it used to be. Basically, your Fist Weaving rotation looks a little something like this. You're going to Tiger Palm. Tiger Palm just does an attack, deals damage. Great. You have Blackout Kick, which kicks, does damage. Great. And then you have Rising Sun Kick. Kicks, does damage. Great. And it costs mana, which sucks. But anyway, the whole point is that you're also looking at this Teachings of the Monastery passive that we have. Your Tiger Palm causes your next Blackout Kick to strike an additional time, stacking up to 3. Great. Why does this matter? Because our Blackout Kick has a 15% chance to reset the remaining cooldown of Rising Sun Kick. And it's really, really awesome that even just these 2 paragraphs force you to form a rotation with these abilities. You want to use Tiger Palm before you use Blackout Kick because you can strike up to an additional time. And every single time that you strike with Blackout Kick, you have a 15% chance to reset the remaining cooldown of Rising Sun Kick, which means that you want to be using Rising Sun Kick every single time it's off cooldown so that you are actually getting the resets. And that also means that if you're taking Rising Thunder, that you want to make sure that you're using your Thunder Focus Tea off cooldown, because you never really know when your Rising Sun Kick will come off cooldown, which will lead to your Thunder Focus Tea coming off cooldown. So it's quite the interactive, thought-provoking little thing there. And I mean, it's way less complicated than things used to be. but it's definitely enough, coupled with everything else that's going on, to really kind of give yourself a mini game to play, all the while still being, making sure that you're able to heal everything that's going on. This is also why you can kind of see that some of these other abilities make a lot of sense if you're in melee actually doing things, right? Like if I'm in melee, Chi Burst is actually still pretty good because I'm in the more than likely the biggest clump of players. Same thing with Zen Pulse. I can maybe even target myself, be in melee, and then Zen Pulse things. So it's pretty cool stuff. Indeed, if you want to play that way, man, more power to you. I'm actually really excited to try it out as well. Other than that, we now have Res and Mass Res in Resuscitate and Reawaken. Those are all the main points that I really want to hit in this video, as I'm sure it's drug on for way too long already. But I really want to talk about this class. I'm super excited about it. I'm super excited to probably call this my main in Legion. I hope that I was able to give you guys some sort of insight on how the class plays. If you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, but I'm going to go off and play some more Mistweaver. So thank you very much for watching.